In this video, we will deep dive into the differences between agility and grit in Conan Exiles, and talk about which is better to have for maneuverability in various situations. Hello everyone, and welcome to another Conan Exiles video. I'm Exiled Phoenix, and today we will be going over the differences between agility and grit, and just how they affect your stamina, your sprinting, climbing, etc. Alright, so I have set up two tracks here in the desert on a pretty flat area, and we are going to do a sprint test. Now this is basically going to be sprinting from a full stamina bar until my stamina bar is empty, and seeing how far we get. So for our first test, we are literally going to just use agility. We've got Precision Strike as the first perk, and Rolling Thrust as the second perk, which is what you're going to have in a PvP build anyway. But the point here is to just keep everything kind of isolated, like the only thing we're looking at is agility alone. Now the reason why I'm testing this versus just grit is because agility, that third perk, quick-footed, jogging, sprinting, jumping, swimming, and climbing cost less stamina and are faster. So I want to see how far we can get sprinting with just agility and only 126 stamina versus a grit build where I would have like 189 stamina, but not be quite as fast. And also in the grit build, you wouldn't have the reduced cost of stamina either. Alright, in order to do this test accurately, I'm going to line up with this wall, turn straight around, and start sprinting. Now, yesterday when I did this test, I made it one full foundation further than I can today, which is bizarre. I don't know why this game is so inconsistent. I also had 129 stamina. But yeah, right about to here. Yesterday I was able to make it to this foundation, but you know, whatever, funcom. Alright, so that's with an agility build and only 126 stamina. Now we're going to do a grit build. Now I'm going to use endurance, even though it's not going to matter because stamina does not regenerate when you're sprinting anyway, so for this test it is not going to help. And this one you can go either way, it doesn't really matter. There's nothing here that particularly helps us if we choose one or the other. So now, as you can see, I have 186 max stamina. So we are going to line up with this wall, turn straight around, and start sprinting. Now as you can see, I am not as fast because all I have is grit. I do not have that third perk in agility, and stamina is also going down a little bit faster because we don't have that third perk that reduces the cost of sprint. Alright, so we made it to about here. Again, yesterday I was making it to about there, so very interesting. But yeah, today we're barely making it past the agility mark. Now, keep in mind, this is with 186 stamina, and I only had 126, and was getting right to there. Now I would like to do a speed test, because now I want to know how much faster I could get to a certain spot. And these markers may have already answered it for you, but I will show you in the video anyway. So for the speed test, I decided to go for a 15-second sprint, and see how far each build got. Now I'm going to put both of these runs in the agility and grit builds side by side on the screen. I do not have a timer function on this editor, but you can see them side by side, and it was a 15-second run. So basically what we're seeing here is that agility gets a lot further in 15 seconds than grit did. Alright, so far we know that with a grit build we can run further, but with an agility build we will get there faster. Now you might argue that by that logic someone in a grit build could still outrun someone in an agility build. However, the person in the agility build will be moving faster, and because stamina recovery is not that much different, even if you use the endurance perk in grit, the agility person will still win the race. Now, what I want to do for a second test is I am going to put on the stamina pieces of your traditional light armor PvP kit, because I want to see if with the extra stamina I can run further with the agility build. Alright, so we already know grit can run further than agility without any armor, but let's try it with the additional stamina. Now I have 180 total stamina with the agility build. As you can see, I still just have my points in agility. Alright, here we go. Now keep in mind, in a grit build with 187 stamina, I stopped right there. Alright, so right about here, I will put a pillar down. Alright, now I'm going to go back and respec to the grit build and try it again. Alright, so as you can see, we are back in the grit build, and the reason why I'm doing this is because some people may argue that you can put the same armor on a grit build and potentially run further. So we're going to try it out. Now I have 240 stamina in a grit build, and I am going to just run and see how far we get. Alright, so it would have been right about here. Obviously not quite as far, so what that means is that the stamina cost reduction from that third perk in agility, quick-footed, is worth more at larger amounts of stamina than having all the stamina from grit. Not only that, I got here a lot faster in that agility build than I did in the grit build, because the movement speed, I think it's like 10 or 20% faster, I think, or something like that. Also because of the quick-footed. And again, just to reiterate, with about 180 stamina, I got further with an agility build than with 240 stamina in a grit build. Now, if we want to take this a step further, we can actually go into agility and take this up to perk 3. Now we will have not only the additional stamina from agility, but also the quick-footed. Jogging, sprinting, jumping, swimming, and climbing cost less stamina and are faster. And I'm actually going to take this all the way to the end. That way we have the absolute max amount of stamina, 260 stamina, and of course the speed and cost reduction. So now I am guessing that we're going to run way further than before. So let's try this out. I am actually going to speed this up because it is going to take a while. Yeah, way past both markers. Alright, so we are way out here now. That is much further than any of those other markers. Okay, so obviously you want to have agility and grit for the absolute best maneuverability. But that's not always possible in a lot of builds. If you have an agility, vitality, grit build, you generally don't have much carry capacity at all. If you do strength, agility, grit, then you don't have any HP, and now that Steel Thud has been nerfed, it's not really worth it. So getting grit into your build can be difficult. Now if you really want to, you can short your strength by 1 perk and then put 5 in grit, because that actually helps out a lot, because the first perk in grit automatically gives you an additional 20 stamina. Plus you get a certain amount of extra stamina just for putting 5 in grit, not including the 20 from the perk. But if you have to choose between the two and you're wearing armor that increases stamina, you're probably just going to want agility over grit. Now, you could argue that grit gives you an armor bonus, which is true. However, the armor bonus from grit, especially if you're wearing heavy armor, is not that much. Let me put on my full set of armor. So in this PvP build, I have 433 armor value, which translates to 46% damage reduction. If I put points into grit, let's say I even use stout, which gives us the absolute most beef. Now with a full stamina bar, we have a 681 armor value, which translates to 57% damage reduction, so about 11% more damage reduction than without the grit. So with light armor, that's okay. But again, if you do a strength, agility, grit build, you're going to be without carry capacity. You're going to be able to carry like 1 weapon, and you're still going to have to rely on some kind of carry capacity increasing armor like the Silent Legion Light Gauntlets, which is going to take some max health down as well. If you're wearing heavy armor, your armor value will be up there closer to 1600. If you then try to apply grit and get that extra 200 or so armor value, it's not really going to make that much of a difference at that level of armor. Because the way that the game calculates your damage reduction from your armor value, basically the higher armor value you have, the less of a difference it makes in damage reduction. Alright, so we are also going to do a climb test just for kicks and giggles. Going to start with the grit build, and I am not wearing any armor for this test. So I'm going to jump onto this wall, because you have to jump to climb anyway. It takes a certain amount of stamina to jump up onto the wall. And that is also not being reduced because I don't have that quick-footed, which would reduce the cost of jump. So it's going to cost me a little bit more just to jump up onto the wall. But there's 1 foundation, 2 foundations, 3. About 14 foundations. Now we're going to reset our points and put them into agility. Alright, so back to our 126 stamina. And we climb this wall. And just short of 14. I was able to climb up there the other day to that exact marker that I put, and that's why I set this down lower so I can make an exact marker. So again, 126 stamina, and I'm climbing basically just as far as I could with 186 stamina with the grit build. Now, I do believe if I put the stamina armor on, we would see similar results to the run test, where the agility build would just blow the grit build out of the water. I'm also not going to do a swim test, but I can tell you that it is possible to run the entire Sunken City dungeon without any additional gear if you have the third perk in agility to increase your swim speed. But yeah, without that speed, that dungeon would be pretty tough to run, because some of those swims from one building to the other are pretty far apart. So my conclusion is, especially after the nerf to Steel Food, agility is just way better in general than grit. Now, grit can be useful in PvE builds, for sure. It is absolutely fine to use that. You do get more damage reduction, especially if you don't have super great armor yet. It does provide you with a lot of extra damage reduction. But again, Steel Food got nerfed, so it's not really that great anymore. If anything, you might want to go to 15 in grit, and not any more than that. But for PvP, you absolutely need to have agility. Like, if it's between agility and grit, you want to have agility, because without that quick-footed perk, you're just not going to be able to outrun enemies. They're going to catch up to you and they're going to kill you. And vice versa. If you're chasing an enemy, it's impossible to catch someone who has quick-footed if you don't have it. Not only do you get extra speed, you get stamina cost reduction, and as we've proven, when you're wearing the pieces of stamina armor, the agility build, speed, and cost reduction gets you further, faster than the grit. Now, despite the fact that this video is mainly about the maneuverability between agility and grit, we are going to talk about the fact that agility gives you a set of damage bonuses that affect all types of weapons. So for instance, backstab, deal 15% increased damage when attacking from behind. That applies to strength weapons too. Same thing with precision strike, 10% additional armor penetration. That applies to all types of weapons. And rolling thrust, for the final perk, you get 25% increased penetration after dodging, and your attack costs nothing. That applies to all weapons, including strength weapons. On top of that, you get a certain bonus to strength weapons from having agility. So if we get out our weapon here, and we check our stats, we have total damage of 123, and we have damage from weapon is 112, which is the damage number of the weapon. Damage from strength is 0 because I have nothing in strength, but damage from agility is 11. So you get a bonus of about 10% of your strength weapon's damage from having just a full bar of agility. And I figured I would just throw that in there because I did talk about grit's armor bonus, despite the fact that this is more of a maneuverability based video, so I figured I would talk about the additional perks from having agility as well. Now, one thing I also failed to mention was that with agility, you actually get faster rolls. So let me go ahead and clear agility so you can see the difference. It's not so much that the rolling is slower now, but that the recovery is slower, like the standing up. So let's say I get out a pike. Pike, roll, pike, roll. See how slow that is? Now let me go ahead and put my points back into agility. And of course rolling thrust is going to give me free hits every time I roll. But now as you can see, it's going to be so much faster. And as you can see, each time you roll, you stand up on your feet and move a lot faster. So if you don't have those points in agility, you're going to be stuck in that animation for longer without being able to sprint or attack. So not only does agility increase your movement speed and reduce the stamina cost of sprinting, jumping, climbing, and swimming, but it also increases the speed of your roll, which is just another reason why agility is way more important than grit in PvP. So that is my logical analysis and conclusion of grit versus agility. If you enjoyed this video, you might also enjoy this video on the left showing various thrall stats that you might not have known. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace.